Kundalini. An Occult Experience by George Sidney Arundale. Chapter 8. Centers and Functions of Kundalini. More advanced students often show the student a number of ways of using Kundalini, which, by the way, seems crimson in color. One method is of drawing a pupil into the teacher's own Kundalini-infused aura, so that he takes, as it were, a Kundalini bath. This is a potent vitalizatio, and does no harm at all, provided the teacher takes care, as he does, to see that in the individual there are no prominent characteristics which might be undesirably intensified by Kundalini stimulation. It should be remembered that to bathe in Kundalini does not involve the arousing of Kundalini, for in one way we are all bathing in Kundalini, the vital principle, Bergsozilla vital. But to admit a person to a bath of what may be called concentrated Kundalini demands care. It might be suitable for an undeveloped person of an unobjectionable disposition, and also for a developed person who has already learned to dominate his lower nature. One of the reasons at any rate why the elder brethren are unable to live in the outer world is the effect upon the average individual of their supremely dynamic Kundalini. We know how a wireless station, for example, seems charged with electricity, the air being full of it. Some people are adversely affected by this electrical atmosphere. Similarly, in far more intense degree, many people would be even dangerously affected by the physical propinquity of an elder brother dynamic with Kundalini fire. The world is not yet ready for such stimulation. Consider the effect the Christ had upon the people 2,000 years ago, even though he used the body of a disciple. The Kundalini fire in the disciple, inevitably intensified by the immediate presence of the Christ, fired the people one way or the other, and finally the other. There was inadequate self-control to stand the strain of the searching penetration of Kundalini. We have been told that this was anticipated, and that the work planned was fulfilled when a few disciples became available to transmit the Christ's message to future generations. No more was expected from the people of the time, or perhaps not much more, for it was realized that the force introduced into their midst would probably be too much for them. Yet, for the sake of the few who could be inspired to pass on the message to unborn generations, the risk of non-acceptance and of the murder of the physical vehicle of the Lord had to be run. May it not be that the karma of the Jews is not so heavy as might otherwise be imagined, for they were face to face with a force the effects of which even the love of the Christ himself could not neutralize, or should I rather say, turn aside, transmute or veil. Kundalini fire is the essence of the love of God, so that there can be no question of utilizatio, but only of, as it were, protecting the eyes from a blinding light. This could not be perfectly done 2,000 years ago. In this connection, there are a number of complicated considerations into which I need not enter. 1. for example, is the extent to which constant and immediate contact with crowds has to be avoided, much of the work being done from centers, rather than in the midst of the people. The word of a Savior thus descends into the future partly through his life in his disciples, partly through transmission by disciples and through books, but largely, mainly, through highly charged Kundalini centers, Kundalini thus concentrating in special areas on the surface of the earth, bathing pools of fire, spiritual bathing pools, as they indeed become, as well as centers for the emanation of the fire throughout the world. To return to the methods of using Kundalini, another way seemed to be that of directing a stream through the head of an individual, through what seemed to be a funnel-shaped opening, so that the stream floods the body, or rather the bodies. This is a safe method of using the force since it reflects the principle of fructification, which is ever from above: sunshine, rain, etc. Care must, however, be taken that the force thus employed is adapted in intensity to the receptivity of the individual. Some people may be able to stand a tropical storm, but the majority need but gentle rain. A third method of the use of this fire is in the case of protection against machinations of brethren of the shadow. A student came across a case of an undesirable person who was inciting people to commit suicide, and had even urged them to the point of hanging cords around their necks. The law allowed him in this case to spray upon the undesirable individual, or possibly thought form emanating from an undesirable individual, a piercing stream of crimson fire. In the case of the form, it was at once destroyed, thus instantly freeing the victims from their obsession. What was the nature of the repercussion upon the individual himself? Probably illness, possibly disintegration. A curious feature of the process seemed to be that the fire was directed from a center. It seems as if Kundalini can be sent forth from any center, though preferably from the solar plexus center or from the center between the eyebrows. We thus begin to realize that the great centers of the body are the main distributors of force. It is not a matter of eyes or hands or feet, but of centers. This audio file was created by Payoprita Basic. You can download it at payoprita.com.